Good evening, all. It's 5:30. Wednesday, October 16th, and this is the Palm Springs Airport Commission. We welcome all, glad you're here. We're gonna start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Brian, this is your first meeting.
Oh, don't do this tonight.
Your first live. So if I want to lead us, we'll go with.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Brian. You're ready to passage.
Yeah.
All right, is the agenda posted?
Yeah, the agenda is posted.
Okay, can we have a roll call on the agenda, please?
Thanks.
Yes, here.
Merriman. Here. Burke.
Present.
Caldwell.
Here.
Corcoran.
Here.
Delgado. Evanstein. Here. Fong. Hedrick.
Here.
Keel.
Here.
Martin.
Here.
McDermott.
Here.
Hart.
Here.
I. Here. Sam Laska. Here. Wiseman. Here. Young.
Here.
We have a four.
Thank you. All right, we have to, all right, we just did that, right? So, we go to public comments. Is there anyone here to make a public comment? Anybody on Zoom?
You did separate agenda?
I thought we said, did we just, what did we do? Oh, that's roll call. I'm sorry, guys. The agenda is there. We need a motion to accept the agenda. Got it. Hard. Go ahead, Andrew.
Banks.
Yes.
Merriman.
Yes.
Burke.
Yes.
Caldwell.
Yes.
Corcoran.
Yes.
Evanstein.
Yes.
Fong. Hedrick.
Yes.
Keel.
Yes.
McDermott.
Yes.
Hart.
Yes.
I. Yes. Sam Laska.
Yes.
Wiseman.
Yes.
Young.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. You actually skipped me, but I would have said yes.
Well, actually, so sorry.
And Christian, I wanted to welcome you to your public meeting. We'll save the pledge for you next month. But we're happy you're welcome.
Practice.
Okay, any public comments? Okay, so now we have two sets of agenda minutes we have to approve. One for May 15th and also for June. I mean, it's going to be two separate votes. So can I have a motion to approve the May 15th minutes?
So,
Second? Second. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Banks.
Yes.
Merriman.
Yes.
Burke.
Yes.
Caldwell.
Yes.
Corcoran.
Yes.
Martin. Evanstein.
Yes.
Fong. Hedrick.
Abstain.
Keel.
Abstain.
McDermott.
abstain?
Hart.
Yes.
I. Abstain. Sam Laska. Wiseman.
Yes.
Young.
Abstain.
Okay, thank you. Now for the June 18th minutes. I have a motion to accept.
Move approve.
Second. Second. Roll call, please.
Banks.
Yes.
Merriman.
Yes.
Burke.
Yes.
Caldwell.
Yes.
Corcoran.
Yes.
Martin.
Abstain.
Evanstein.
Yes.
Fong. Hedrick.
Abstain.
Keel.
Yes.
McDermott.
Abstain?
Hart.
Abstain?
I.
Yes.
Sam Laska.
Okay.
Wiseman.
Yes.
And Young.
Yes.
Thank you. We can move on to our discussion of action items. Is Ryan and team, are they on Zoom?
Hello all. Brian Carranza here from Mead and Hunt.
Okay, you guys are all here, just want to confirm. Oh, Ryan's being there, you're right.
And I'm here, Chairman Corcoran. Sorry about that.
Problem. this discussion, this agenda item is really important. It is part of our master plan discussion, and this is our traffic analysis. As you remember, we were asked by city council to look at, besides the north option for the rental car center, look at the south option, we look at three options, we picked one for the analysis. Brian and team have already planned to present their findings around the traffic impact of all of these potential locations for the rental facilities. Before we get into this, I just want to make a point, for not only for the commission, but for the public. We are looking at this stage of the long range plan, we are looking at these big pieces of decisions, like where will things go? We have not had any discussions about design. And we look forward to those discussions, we look forward to talking to architects and talking about design, but that's not where we are in this process. So we want to just clarify that for those who are watching and those who may be attending, we'll get there. But the look and feel of, in this case, the car rental center, we haven't come close to that decision yet. Now, what we have done is said in these two options, that the car rental center on the north side, after much discussion, we're gonna bury 2 floors. And there'll be 2 floors plus parking on the roof. So it's a 2-story structure plus parking on the roof. That's what's being proposed, just the structure, not the design date. The south option is 5 stories. So that's where we are in terms of just the space, the square footage proposed to meet the requirements that the rental companies and other people have given us. But there's been no discussion around the design of this. Are there any comments?
No, I think all I would add to that is, what's in front of us tonight is a motion for the location. That's it. It is really easy when we look at the drawings that will be shown again tonight and that are in the packet, to look at big orange boxes and immediately think of design. So to Kevin's point, that's going to happen at a much later date, if we're very thoughtful, as we will know, but with a lot of input. So that's my suggestion and my thoughts as we move forward with this.
With that, Ryan, we'll turn it over to you. And your
Great. Can you all hear me okay?
yes.
Thumbs up. Okay. Brian's going to share the slides. And yeah, good evening, Mr. Chairman, commission members. It's a pleasure to be here and present this to you tonight. In addition to some information on the traffic analysis, we also have an updated cost comparison of these 2 rental car center sites. And just as a reminder, the city council was not a big fan of the previous acronym we were using for this rental car facility. We were referring to it as a CONRAC, which is a shortened acronym for a consolidated rental car facility. They asked that we use a more simpler term, so we're referring to both of these as rental car centers, or RCC. Both of these rental car centers are envisioned to be all-encompassing. In other words, all rental car functions are intended to be included in each of these rental car centers. So that's rental car check-in desks, rental car ready return parking, rental car storage, as well as rental car maintenance and wash facilities. So there's a lot of functions in this center, which is what drives the square footage requirements and why we need to look at 5 levels for both rental car center. We've also looked at the traffic on El Cielo and on Ramon, and particularly these intersections that you see on Brian's drawing here, with the white dots. We looked at where those intersections may have challenges in the future with both the combination of city traffic as well as general airport growth, and then also with the added traffic from these rental car centers. To not bury the lead, the traffic impact analysis was a little bit surprising to us in that we don't have any failing intersections on El Cielo. El Cielo seems to be able to handle the traffic, which is counterintuitive in that El Cielo is only 4 lanes wide and Ramon is 6 lanes wide. You would think Ramon could handle a lot more traffic, but as our traffic engineers have explained to me in detail, Ramon carries a lot more daily traffic in general. The other thing to keep in mind about the traffic to and from each of the rental car centers is that it's going to happen throughout the day. It's going to be spread throughout the day. And our peak period when the airport has its most flights is around the midday, around the noon hour. So it doesn't overlap with morning rush hour and evening rush hour. So that's also kind of advantageous. Then the last thing we're going to share with you all tonight is some updated cost estimates on these two facilities. So with that, Brian, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate that. And yeah, just a quick reminder on this slide, sort of generally what we did in terms of evaluation, in terms of each of these different sites, and that each of these do meet all the 2043 landside facility requirements for curb front parking, rental, regional transit, those kind of things. And then again, these are sort of the intersections we evaluated as part of our traffic analysis. So we did counts and then projected forward based on those different intersections. So moving on, we've got two different sites, obviously north and south. As far as the evaluation goes, just to sort of show some homework, we've got our different facility landside requirements on the side here, but really what we are evaluating is related to sort of traffic movement heading, following the orange dots here to the RCC location. So on the north side, you can sort of see several different directions in which traffic would go. And obviously that includes traveling public going to rent a vehicle, airport visitors exiting, those kind of things. And then on the south site, we have a similar sort of model showing where those the traffic kind of distribution might go. So you can again follow this orange dot to sort of evaluate, okay, this is sort of the pathways that people will be visiting the RCC locations. So just kind of following these, you'll see sort of how that's evaluated. And I'll finish it up with sort of one more here. And you can sort of see that that southern entrance and exit sort of accommodates quite a bit there. Moving on, as Ryan pointed out, there's sort of two key findings here. Number one being that the impact to the traffic overall on each of these roads is not predominantly driven by the RCC location, but rather the airport growth as a whole. So think about sort of the added traffic that's going to be caused, obviously, just from airport growth, public use of these roads over time as population growth occurs, et cetera. And then the actual siting of the different RCC locations have relatively comparable impacts to the adjacent roads that they are being fed by. And I'll begin by showing my homework here. So to that first point, modeling the existing level of service, you can sort of see a legend here that identifies a level of service. So a good way to think about it would be green means great, D or E means good to go, and then F sort of means a failing intersection that needs improvement. And each of these intersections are highlighted and showing a color code to identify what the level of service is as we measure them today. As you can see, each of these intersections are good to go. As you look at the impact to the traffic, again, this is for the planning activity level 4, which is that 2043 year. You can see that the impact without citing a rental car center at all does have an impact to this intersection here and to this intersection here in terms of level of service. So that would be the change. And again, that's without the RCC. So you can see here that there are definitely impacts based on the airport growth. When we start to look at the siting of the individual RCC locations, evaluating the north side, so then this is adding the traffic anticipated by that RCC, you'll see that the intersections generally remain the same with the exception of this intersection at Bristow Road. So I'll just isolate that here. And what that really does is the added traffic to the north, related to the North RCC takes that intersection at El Cielo Bristow Kirk Douglas and changes it from a C to a D, and that's for the morning peaks. So to that second point, the impacts again, sort of from the siting of the north site would be to degrade this intersection to a D in the morning. So then you go back and look at, again, the planning activity level 4, sort of as the baseline, and then look at the south site, and you'll notice a similar impact here. So the south RCC located here has an impact to that same intersection, and started to isolate that and see what's going on. You can see that that same intersection at El Cielo Bristo and Kirk Douglas goes from a C to D in the AM peak and then to the PM peak. And so generally that sort of outlines the two findings here, that the major impact is, again, driven by the growth at the airport itself, kind of key point 1, and that the impact as far as the siting of the RCC is similar to El Cielo for the north site as it would be for El Cielo for the south site, and generally to Ramon Road as a whole. And then just sort of to recap, because the south side does require a shuttle, we just wanted to show operationally how that might work, and then to point out again the fact that all the traffic from those shuttles is currently modeled to go on existing airport roads and not on public roads, and so you can sort of see how that might occur as it sort of travels around the rental shuttle loop. And just some key metrics as far as what has been discussed. It's about a 1.3 mile round trip. There's different holdover rates depending on the peak or non-peak times. And it's about a 17-minute round trip as a whole. So those are the key findings. Ron, did you want to jump right into talking about the cost estimates?
Absolutely. Thank you for that overview, Brian. And we can certainly go back. If anyone has questions about any particular traffic slides, let us know. We can go back. But we also wanted to share with you all some estimated, these are high level planning cost estimates, rough order of magnitude cost estimates. So based on current construction costs in California with a lot of contingencies, these are erring very high on the conservative side, but the bottom line is that we had estimated previously through our cost estimator that a 5-story rental car center would cost about $450 million. For the north site, we've talked about the potential for 2 of those levels to be subsurface. That adds about a 30% premium, so that drives that cost up just north of 500 million. On the south side, we've got the added costs of land acquisition and also the 20-year electric bus operation for the rental car center. So it really doesn't, so just like traffic, the costs are not a big differentiator at this point. And so I think the message for you all as commission members, and the message that we're going to need to carry to the community when we do the open house in November, is that this really comes down to, the decision comes down to accommodating passenger convenience for your tourists versus appeasing the local community and building the rental car center away from the terminal. So those really are the two kind of driving factors that this comes down to. But that's what we wanted to share tonight. And with that, we're happy to take questions.
When you use the word PAL4, just for our new commissioners, that's level 4. That is our last phase in construction to design. It's like a 20-year 20 for PAL4. Is that correct?
Yes. PAL stands for planning activity level, and that's a level of passenger growth that we're anticipating by 2043, and that's roughly 6 million annual passengers in planning activity level 4. So this rental car center would be sized to accommodate that level, but obviously in the early years before you get to 2043, you're going to have a lot of flexibility with what you do, given the square footage of these facilities.
It's kind of worst case scenario, like 20 years from now, this is go.
So, Brandon, a question on, after activity level 4. It seems like the assumption is that there will still be 2 peaks of arrivals and departures. If we're doubling our passenger traffic, I know it's speculative, but do we still have confidence that we'll have just 2 peak periods, or would there potentially be a 3rd or 4th peak period of arrivals and departures if we're doubling our traffic in 15 or 20 years?
Yeah, that's a good question. The peak period is likely to flatten out as airlines spread their flights out, but also as you provide more gates, that gives the airlines opportunity to all fly and operate at the same time. So the midday point in Palm Springs is a popular time for the airlines to get in and out of town to their hubs. So that's probably going to remain the peak, but it's also those valleys are probably going to come up a little bit over time.
So is the assumption this scope only encompasses RCC, or does, when we talk about growth, do we also consider just regular increases in, you know, whether it's residential or increase? You mentioned traffic flow on Ramon is already, you know, it's fairly busy, you know, people coming from other cities, whatever, in Palm Springs. If the answer is no, if it's only RCC, seems like we gotta consider that maybe not us, but maybe at some point overall. Just curious. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can address that. Ultimately, this slide right here speaks to that. This is the anticipated growth as if there's no sighting of an RCC. So anticipating growth for the roads based on projecting out all the various factors that would increase traffic there. So that is sort of built into as like a baseline for the model in that planning activity level 4 year, and then we were then able to add the traffic from the RCC sightings to accommodate what the true impact of what that sighting might be. So that's sort of the methodology on that.
Christian,
Yeah, I know, focusing on the fact that this is an RCC project, I noticed that between the 2 plants north and the south, there is a vast surplus of employee parking spots in the north one, and in the south, we barely make enough for the projected employee parking. And I'm wondering if the first question is there a plan if the south was the accepted plan? Is there a south for expansion of employee parking if needed? And how much of this project will address the movement of employees? I look at that lot F for employees and I see a long way to the terminal. How much of the project, if any, is focused on the movement of employees into the airport facility?
Yeah, I can start with that, Brian, and you can help me. So lot D on Brian's drawing here is envisioned as a future employee lot across El Cielo, but we're also planning to use half of that lot for a consolidated energy facility to provide the energy needed for all these improvements. So Brian, I think we essentially identify some additional parking growth to the north that could be used for employee. But the bottom line is all of these surface parking lots meet the 20-year demand, including employee parking.
That's correct. And there is also some additional flexibility around the peak time for the actual RCC itself and its utilization of like storage, for example, that could potentially be used in either site. And then also this shuttle depot, we sort of cited it in this location, but you know, if there's a priority for employee parking, you certainly can look at that. So there's a lot of options. We've sort of just optimized what we think would be a high level kind of plan moving forward.
And then the second part of that question was the movement of employees to the airport facility. Is that being considered as part of this project, whether it's surface or shuttle or something?
Go ahead, Brian.
Do you want? Sure. So ultimately, from my understanding, there is consideration of sort of a public shuttle for some of these more remote lots. That would likely be a better method for the employees to be using, kind of get to the terminal and to work. Um, the rental shuttles are typically preferred to be dedicated for that use itself. There's a variety of reasons for that, but that's sort of part of our overall recommendations in terms of facility. Um,
Yeah, it's really an operational question that can be figured out after the master plan, but it's a good question. We need to get employees to and from their cars to the terminal.
Going subterranean, is there any concern as far as earthquakes, things of that nature?
It's a good point. That's probably a design consideration. But my understanding is that there are some subsurface parking garages in Palm Springs. So I think it's possible, but going 2 levels probably needs some engineering investigation for sure.
Brian, I was wondering on the level of service diagrams, what is the real number next to the A, B, C? I mean, what does that even represent?
I can take that. That represents seconds of delay. So if you anticipate sort of arriving at that intersection, how long you might anticipate waiting, and the various level of services sort of accommodate what user expectations might be based on meeting an intersection and waiting that long in an urban setting like this.
So, you've made a comment about a public shuttle versus a rental car shuttle. What to ask, are we understanding north side, because I assume long-term parking is gonna be a shuttle. So is there no leverage of rental car shuttles and long-term parking shuttles that would be worth considering?
So is the question, could you use the same shuttle for both employee shuttling as well as rental car shuttling?
Yes, I guess so. That's what I was assuming we're gonna do, but then you said there would be separate shuttles for long-term lots.
Yeah, at most airports, they're separate. The rental car operation would be built into the the rates and charges that you charge the rental car companies. So it would definitely be a separate operation, but that's not to say you couldn't use the rental car center as the location where both shuttles operated to and from.
Another question, could you speak to the location of the common transportation center in both options? It looks like in the northern option, the GTC is part of the larger building.
Yeah, that's a good question, Brian. I'll start and you can jump in. We were initially looking at in the north rental car center option, we were looking at lot A and lot B as potential for a ground transportation center, but unfortunately the parking lots they're tied to the historic nature of the terminal and the historic facade of the terminal. So doing anything other than the kind of current use in those 2 lots is probably going to be very difficult. So for that reason, we incorporated the ground transportation center into the rental car center in this alternative. On the south alternative, Brian, if you want to flip to that one, we considered this parking expansion north of the loop as a possible location for a ground transportation center.
Does that have any impact on the north alternative being able to meet PAL 4? Because I'm just looking at the square footage demands. And if you have 1.5 million square feet of facility, but then you have to take out 80,000 for the ground transport center, not quite that kind of really.
Yeah, the orange box that Brian's showing here in the north option is a little bit bigger. There's kind of, you can kind of see a faint outline of some boundaries that the thought is the boundary that's near the Near the loop would likely be rental car counter space. And then this boundary that's in between the rental car center and El Cielo could be parking for the ground transportation shuttles. But that orange footprint in the north is larger than the orange footprint on the south.
Yeah.
Other questions?
So Ryan and Brian, do the cost analysis, do they account for the day-to-day operations? I know the operations team has mentioned that previous meeting that they would need to roll up their sleeves and obviously manage wherever we decide to put the RCC. Is that cost comparison baked into that?
That is, so the third line in this cost estimate is basically a updated cost on a 20-year shuttle bus operation. So this includes the cost of the shuttle buses as well as charging facilities, as well as the maintenance and operational costs of labor to run the shuttle bus operation.
I guess, but beyond that piece, right, if Jeremy gets called over for whatever reason, are we accounting for he and his team, I'm using an example, obviously, but having to go from this part of the airport to the south side as well?
That's probably a level of detail we don't consider in this. We're really trying to just provide a cost comparison of the two options. And obviously the south option has this operational cost that the north site does not.
Right, so I know that's more of a soft cost, I understand, okay.
I know we're saying we've discussed electric buses for the south side. What does that option do to our sustainability commitment, if any?
I think it absolutely helps. We do have to provide the master planning challenges. We have to provide some space for physical charging of those buses, and Brian has identified that on these drawings. But I think it absolutely aligns with your sustainability goals for sure. Yeah, this spot where he has labeled shuttle depot is the thought, where you would install some charging facilities and because these buses do have to be recharged fairly often, is my understanding.
Say it's a wash between the two, because in earlier discussions, the sustainability team said they have concerns about buses versus no buses. I know these are electric buses. Would we say that just from that perspective, it's a wash between the two?
I think so. I don't think, Brian, how many buses were we estimating? Do you recall?
If I recall, it was 10 in the peak.
10 buses running at one time during the peak hour, so it's not a significant amount of vehicle traffic.
It's a lot of traffic going to that circle relative to the north option. There's no other traffic going through there.
Does the cost calculation include like charging infrastructure in the shuttle depot?
Yes, that's all part of it. But again, at $500 million, there's a lot of fluff in this cost estimate. There's a lot of contingency costs built in. But the idea is in that $66 million line item, it's all in on the shuttle bus operation.
Right.
Kind of an odd question, but has there been any discussion about the non-airport traffic on Kirk Douglas Way? People avoiding Ramon to go east, right? And I do it all the time, and I know a lot of other people do as well. But you think about what we're looking at from the traffic perspective, especially if the car rental facility is on the south side. You know, is there any way of controlling that? Has there ever been that kind of discussion?
Was that included in your analysis? The anticipated local traffic on this?
It was not, but we do understand the issue, folks. I think it's a lot of high schoolers, if I'm not mistaken, that could take Baristo Road and cross onto Kirk Douglas Way. Brian and I have talked about this intersection, and we don't see a reason why you couldn't eliminate that access point. All of the other flows we look at are still work without that access point.
Yes, could you go back to the funding slide comparison? My question is, are you at a point of detailed analysis where you can look at the impacts on the sources of funding that will be required on north versus south? And for example, with the shuttle bus operation, since that would be funded presumably from CFC funds, that takes those funds away from debt service on the rental car, what's the term we're using, rental car center?
Yeah, it's a good question. Is Harry not in the room?
He's not.
Tonight? Okay. One important thing to note about this is we have looked at the financial funding potential for this rental car facility, and it doesn't pencil out at the moment at $500 million. There's just there's just not enough CFC funding. And honestly, if you borrowed the money to build it, it would be hard to make it work with the fees that you're able to charge the rental cars. So post master plan, there's going to have to be some discussions about what is feasible. Maybe it's not 5 levels, maybe it's not all the functions that we desire to have in this facility make it into the facility, and maybe initially something smaller gets built. But without some kind of private partnership funding, right now $500 million is just hard to make pencil out for this magnitude of facility.
So a follow-up question is, for the current estimates, what would be the annual debt service for, say, a 30-year fund?
Yeah, I don't have that number at my fingertips, but it would be fairly significant. Probably more than you would be able to charge the rental car companies.
Well, that would be good to know.
Well, right now, we're just trying to figure out the location.
Well, yeah, but you go so far along on locations. I've been through this with College of the Desert when they're planning all these pie in the sky dreams of having multiple facilities, and then not funding to back up. And then the public starts to look at this and starts to draw reliance upon, okay, this is the plan. So I think you need to have some top level estimates included, as well as, realistic estimates on how much you're going to be able to tap into VIL funds, et cetera, versus what you generate internally through CFCs.
Brian, isn't that included in the financial feasibility study that's on?
It is, yes. We have a full financial chapter for this master plan where we have looked at all of this, but it is the number of sources available to fund these projects do not equal the cost of the project. So there will be tough decisions that have to be made. And we have identified in that chapter very clearly where the funding shortfalls are.
So once we get through the master plan piece of it, then we start digging into the programming and getting with our consultants and figuring out what's priority projects, and then we start really diving into the funding piece and the design, what can be funded and how we move forward.
Okay, so a quick and dirty way is just take 8% of the amount that you have to borrow, and that's your annual debt service. So you're looking at, $40 million. And Yeah. And that's looking at about 5.5% to 6% coupon.
And Victoria, how much do we have sitting in the bank right now?
I think it's about 36 million. So, and that's another thing too, for our debt service, like, are we gonna be able to actually fund our debt service here? So, Recondo had previously did an analysis on, I was wrong, it's 49 million, that's what we currently have. So Recondo did an analysis, if we were to do different types of debt service based off of increasing our CFC rate, which is what we did. We ended up increasing our CFC rate, I think it was in 2022, so that we could start collecting at the max, so that we can be prepared for, when we're ready to do this contract, or this, RCC. That's why we have so much cash in the bank. Are we gonna be able to fund 500 million? Like Brian said, no, we're not gonna be able to fund it solely on CFCs, and issue debt on it. We are looking at other funding options, like Brian mentioned, a public-private partnership. But even with that, depending on the details of once we get to that point, we're still gonna have to potentially pay a public-private partnership. So if they go and they build, they put all this money into building, they're gonna want something back in return. They're not just gonna give us the money, right?
Those are typically more expensive than debt financing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, right. So there are, is it realistic right now for $500 million for a rental car center? No, it's not. But for today, what we really need to identify is where can we put this? If we put a 3-story, a 2-story, you know, once we get down the line into the details.
But we can be phased too. What if we said that we could only afford $300 million, and that means we take off 2 stories, we'll just say. Does that affect where we want to put it? Because then now we have an above ground 3-story in the north side versus above ground 3-story in the south side.
Right.
Don't we need to know that before we give a recommendation?
So, looking at this, and you raise a very valid point. But at some point, we'll probably need the whole thing. You may not need the whole thing 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And also, we've got the whole issue of, are rental cars going to be the big thing 10 to 15 years from now? So, just looking at it from a construction standpoint, it's much easier, let's say if you did the south side, and you built 5 stories, but you only built 2/3 the size or half the size. It's much easier to add on.
Like to the back or inside?
To the back, you know, toward Ramon, and do it that way. Than have a huge construction project right up next to the terminal, where you're digging down 3 stories or whatever it takes for the foundation, whatever. So I think I agree, maybe we don't need the whole thing now, but it seems like if you do the south side, it's going to be cheaper for you to add on those additional parts at the point we need it, assuming that rental cars are the thing 10 years from now. I don't know.
But then if we only do 3, the 5 stories in the smaller footprint, we'll probably find less revenue being generated. We may not even be able to afford 300, right? Because we need that volume before 300, 400 million.
So I understand that the 500 million is what we need in 2043, is that correct? So we don't need that
2033.
in 2033. In 2033, what we may decide, gosh, we're growing so fast, rental cars are even more important. We need to build phase 2. But it seems like building phase 2 is gonna be much easier on the south side, less disruptive to the airport, when that time comes. And, you know, with inflation, et cetera, we'll be able to charge more. And just to give you an idea of charges, I rented a car home a day here. My base rent was $62. By the time I got out the door, it was $97 because of taxes and add-ons.
And CFCs.
Yes.
I definitely agree with everything you said, Commissioner Hendrick. I just want us to consider the wisdom of the future parking garage and its value, as an alternative facility from a rental car facility. If it would be a depot for autonomous vehicles, where would it provide the most value be and would be located?
Oh, Mr. Weissman, I'm fully in favor of having a parking garage, but that's a battle we'll fight with.
Interesting with what you're saying, and I'm just wondering, how does that impact the 77 million for the south? Even if we get smaller footprint of it, how much of that are we still incurring over this time period?
So, and I mean, if you're only building 2/3, theoretically, you're gonna still have to acquire the land. You wanna acquire the land now, because that's always gonna go up, it's an asset. If you build 2/3, it should be 2/3 construction cost. The bus operation, of 66 million, I think there are, I'm not sold on that idea, that's a battle that we can fight at a later date. But I mean, as far as construction, you're knocking a third off the, construction cost.
So consultant team, comments and reactions to these ideas?
Yeah, I think it's all good discussion. One thing that we've discussed multiple times on the north side is you've got a very, very high seasonality at this airport, and the rental car operators bring cars in for the peak season, and then they take those cars somewhere else when it's not peak season. And Harry has discussed the opportunity to potentially have premium parking in some of the rental car center in the north option during the non-peak season and generate revenue that way, and then free that space up for rental car use when the rental cars are busy during the winter months. So that's another consideration. There's a lot of considerations, but really what we need is just a decision on what the concept is, and how it fits into this whole puzzle of the 20-year master plan for the airport.
Before you run, years do we hit PAL2 and PAL3 estimated?
What are the passenger numbers?
Just like
Is that the
what year?
question? Oh, what years? They're roughly 5-year increments, so somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 7 years is PAL2, and 10 to 12 years is PAL3, and PAL4 is out at the 20-year period.
And do we know how many stories PAL3 RCC would be? How many levels?
Sorry, can you ask the question again?
How many stories would we need to build to meet activity level 3?
Probably less than 5. There's a whole negotiation about what gets put on what level, and the functionality of this facility with the rental car operators, and who gets what space. So that all of those things are past master planning level analysis. But obviously for PAL levels 2 and 3, you would need less than 5 stories.
If you pick up Ken's comments about do we assume it's easier to phase this in the south than it would be the north?
I think that's a valid point. You probably have more potential for expansion on both sides of the facility, and less of a construction headache in front of the terminal.
So are you looking for a decision tonight, a recommendation? Yes. Okay.
So I'd like to make a motion that we do the south side.
I'm sorry.
Anyone in the room? We have someone on the phone.
Go ahead.
Is the staff have a recommendation?
Oh, gosh. I think the staff, I would say probably from Harry's perspective, we're probably leaning towards the north option.
The trade, so let's just, before we vote or propose, let's review the trade-offs here. So we started with the north because of customer experience. And then there was some pushback because we all said 5 stories too high. And then we said, all right, let's bury 2, now there's 2 above plus the roof. And some folks in the community are concerned about just the scale of that footprint and where it's located. We still haven't seen the, I guess, updated rendering, so what the view would look like, but some earlier renderings, as you walk out of the front door, it's way, if you look at where it is, it's way beyond City Hall. So some of us have felt by burying 2 levels that that has the potential, along with whatever design things we decide to do with this thing, to overcome some of those concerns. If you look at the south side, because of the shuttle buses, you know, the whole thing is what happens to the customer experience. And we have a lot of local folks who say, ease of walking out of here, getting your bags, getting your car and going is a thing we should preserve, which is why I think we were kind of favorable towards the north option. Some people have said to me, you're worried about the wrong people. You know, like we should be more concerned about what this is gonna look like and the impact on the views and, you know, City Hall and the other mid-century modern buildings that are featured in that corner. Then we should worry about our customers who have to get on shuttle buses and they schlep over to the south side. I don't know how to balance those out. Because we know that when we started looking at the north side, that was it. Get your bags right out the door in your car and you go. And then now we looked at the traffic, it's a wash. That's not a big factor one or another. What you're bringing up, Ken, is, you know, we need to be more flexible in how we build this thing. You know, does that lean towards the south? But if we do the south, it comes with all the other issues in terms of shuttle buses and customer experience. Are we ready to go there?
And I just simply want to reiterate from the voice of tourism, it is our #1 industry. And we hear time and time again, we win awards time and time again, and we hear it from journalists who write about this destination over and over again, is the convenience and the ease for our customers as they come in and out. So while we will continue to work on what the terminal looks like and what that expansion looks like and how customer friendly that is, in my perspective, the north terminal is that best option for our customers and tourists.
So what I would add is that we really do have to consider in 20 years, what have we built ourselves? Because if we build this gigantic parking lot on the south side and rental cars are no longer getting autonomous vehicles have taken over, and you know, you can drive in Waymo today in LA over like accidents, you clear the wait list. They're driving around all over. I just this weekend, must have seen at least 10 over the course of 2 days, just driving around, so it's coming. But after this thing is built in 20 years, if it's on the south side, we have a giant parking lot that requires shuttle service to the airport's front door. If we build it on the north, then we have a facility that is convenient for access to the terminal and provide shaded parking within easy access of the terminal in the summer.
Even though the parking study said that we're gonna have enough parking spaces based on where we're gonna be in P4. As I said, as I mentioned, I think in our last commission meeting, a lot of us have heard or seen research that suggests that within 10 years, it's all gonna be Waymo. And the idea of even locals leaving their cars here when you're just gonna call a car and it's gonna come and get you. That's where the future is going. In Los Angeles now, you can't build a parking garage with slopes. It has to be level so that they can be converted to apartments because the anticipation is we're just not gonna need this many. we're not gonna have personal cars or need as many for this. So for the parking side, I was kind of happy to see, we have enough space even if we're wrong about that. But I do think it gets down to this, well, maybe one more question. Brian, we said that we could chop part of, let's say, 2/3 off the south side. Could we do the same thing on the north side? In trying to get to the right number? And let's say you just went up 2/3, you built 2/3, and then we saved the third to add on for futures. Could the same concept that Ken talked about be done on the north side as well?
Well, it's easier to build out the top.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not an architect, but it does seem like having more space to go out would be advantageous versus trying to add on vertically.
Robert? Is there a feeling between staff or me on the acquisition of the south property? Is it gonna be an easy acquisition? Is it gonna be a surprise and difficult? Has anybody even looked into that?
We know who the people are, and we don't know the answer to that question. We're sensing that the price may be going up as we speak. But, and we're not sure about their willingness to borrow that property. We know what they are.
I know we're wrestling with a lot of unknowns. Nobody has a crystal ball at this point. If we did, we would be, right, we would be doing something else. I think, is there a scenario where we could kind of take a piece of what you were suggesting, maybe and do this in phases, where we do maybe we bury a couple of levels in the north side so that we can keep something somewhat level, everybody can still enjoy the view and appreciate the modernism, look and feel that has made Palm Springs, while hedging our bets and perhaps purchasing or acquiring the land on the south side so that in 20 years from now, let's say the autonomous piece does take off and really don't need a giant parking structure, tall or wide. We can meet needs today, but potentially hedge for down the road.
Maybe. But here's a build on your idea. Right now, these are self-contained facilities, right? All the washing, all that other stuff are all included in these designs. If we did 3 stories instead of 5 in the north, and then we decided we need more space, we could acquire and build and move the operations pieces and the wash pieces to another facility in the south side. That could be a way of kind of getting both, maintaining the customer experience that everyone has advocated in the north side. But looking at the south side, if we have to build 2 more stories and then move all the wash and all the administrative offices to the south, which early on in our discussions was discussed. You just put all the other stuff in the south and just keep this focused on just the rental car facility, picking up and dropping off. I mean, that could be a possibility if you're looking to mitigate this a bit.
And I know our charge today is to determine north or south. And I think we could at least do that today. But from my perspective, and I apologize for echoing what a lot of people have said, there's less moving parts for north because people are taking their own stuff. And you have the south, you got the buses. Somebody's got to put the baggage on the bus. Somebody's gonna get hurt eventually. There's workers' comp claims. That's my income insurance guy. There's so many things that can go wrong because you have more moving parts.
After the summer we've had here, I've had people say to me, this sounds like a good idea, and, the south thing has the advantages. They're saying, if global warming continues, and we start having a 4-month summer, 100 plus 10 degrees, is that a factor we think about here too? Yeah, because you're right, schlepping these things up and down those buses, and Ken and I always talk about, being older, the ones that are gonna have a problem with this stuff. And the shuttle bus stuff scares me. I think we can deal with the design issues, and if we're saying that from a cost perspective, we're never gonna build, can't afford 5 stories, whether they're buried or not. So we're gonna go with 3, or try to price it out, or something smaller. Is the north side still, in terms of customer experience and what's happening to our climate, is that still a better idea for us?
I mean, I fully agree having the thing on the north side is the better option. I really like the idea of coming out of baggage claim, renting a car and leaving. The issue is future costs. Because if we build 2/3 or 50%, trying to build 2 stories on top, plus maintain operations on the north side is going to be an expensive nightmare. If you're going to build 2/3, build the 3 plus 2, and then build out, that's going to be a lot less expensive. And it's going to be, well, wherever you're going to build it, it's going to be a construction nightmare, but you're going to have the nightmare next to your terminal. Versus having the nightmare of the south end.
Are we still looking at a shorter term baggage claim separation from rental car, baggage claim, increase in size, or we were talking about moving them temporarily through the trailer and all that? Okay, so that's a yes. It would seem to me that if by going with the north side option, we could hand in hand as our shorter term construction is progressing, we could incorporate north planning into that as it's going along.
I think that is the plan. I think that is the plan.
Commissioner Long, you have a question?
And just one more thing, just right now, temporarily, rental cars are going to the south anyways.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have some experience with shuttle buses anyways, just when they start the construction of both the baggage claim as well as this if we move this to the north. So we're gonna have a couple of years of having this experience to get a sense of what that feels like. Who's next?
My first part of the comment, the first part of my comment is that when we originally started looking at the location for rental car facilities, I liked what used to be called option 3, which was at the end of 31 left. Further, that's not the option now. And as I looked at these 2 options, there's the issue of cost, 3 floors versus 5. What happens if rental cars don't stay the thing for people to do? And the one thing that I'm reluctant about is to have an option where we take a frankly enormous chunk of on airport property and use it for something that I'm being very inarticulate. I'm concerned about using pieces of property, of airport property. Basically taking airport real estate, which could be better used for something else. And again, it would have been okay to say, move it to the end of 31 left, but even here, at least the property on the north side here is already property that we use for this purpose, and it doesn't require acquiring anything else, and it doesn't require cannibalizing valuable airport space.
Any other comments or questions? Anybody want to advocate one way or another?
So it'll be voted down, but I'm gonna do it anyway. I propose that we build it on the south side for the increased flexibility and lower construction costs. And I believe that there are other alternatives we can look at later on the shuttle bus issue, which I agree, I don't want to be standing 124 degrees waiting for the bus to come with luggage. So, but I believe that for the airport, the most flexibility is from the south side.
Brian, do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. The north side, from many reasons, I think is the preferred option. However, listening to you, Ken, and understanding, what can we afford? Is it 500 million? Is it 300 million? And how do we do that in the north side raises some big questions, which one I have, and I know nothing about this, and it sounds like you probably do. And I understand adding floors is very expensive and difficult to do. Could you do 2/3 of the size, and then if we had to expand, you still went down 2 and built it at that point? So just like the south side, you're expanding out, but here you're down and out.
And what difference is that? Is this a big urgency to have it decided tonight? Because here's why. Yes. Here's why. Now that the traffic study is done, the parking study is done, it's all neutral. We can't take the next step in the planning process unless they start to really focus on one versus the other. And that's why we're looking for our recommendation tonight. Now, eventually this is gonna go to city council. And, if we're all reluctantly, like leaning towards the north, but reluctantly going to the south for cost issues, I'm wondering if we should, if the majority is, we really like to do the north, but do we declare north and then let them do the research and come back and say, this is what the trade-offs are, it's gonna cost, this is what you're gonna have to give up to take the next step, because the staff wants the north, I hear the tourism thing as well. I also, I'm struggling with this customer service thing and how people are gonna feel about it, and we're gonna give up the ease that everyone told us, number one thing is make sure it's easy, and we're stuck. What if we should just make the call and then let them come back in the next phase and tell us that it can't be done, or it's gonna cost too much money, or whatever. I don't know, Beck, what do you think?
I feel strongly that we see that I've used this building in 20 years. And that we can just build less because the future is on its way, and why build for something that's not gonna exist in 20 years?
So are you saying north or south?
So south in 20 years will be a useless building because it'll be a 5-story parking lot far away from the entrance to the airports. North, at least we get, terminal side parking with shade that we can use every summer. And it can become a pickup point for autonomous vehicles.
But would you say north side, 5 stories, 300 square
North
feet
side,
story?
3 stories, because we don't have to build it for the level of
Even though you've been
rental
hard,
car facilities that are expected in 20 years.
even though it's hard to build on top.
Even though it's hard to build on top, I think we wager that it's not gonna grow to PAL4 from a rental car facility perspective. And if such a future would miraculously occur, then we, operate the off facility cleaning and washing, et cetera.
As they're doing now, they do all that stuff in the north.
I think Commissioner Pine, did you ever get up?
He needs a second to this motion, or he needs to withdraw it.
Well, I'd like to modify my motion and say, I like your idea. Let's make a recommendation to the north side, and we'll worry about whether we do 2/3, 4/5, or whatever at a later date.
Just so, between, Jeff, your comments, and Ken, we're gonna have this discussion. Right, we're gonna have this financing discussion. So, let's put it back in their hands and say, for all those reasons, we wanna go with the north, but we know that there's other trade-offs that are gonna take place. Not the least of which is our design. So, I just think Kevin's right. I just think we should go with this, and then let's see where the next step takes us. Knowing that it's gonna be smaller, we can't afford it right now, but brighter minds can come back and do the research and come back and tell us what the options are. I mean, would staff be comfortable with that?
So kind of a process question, so does this, our recommendation tonight go to Palm City Council before additional study is done? Or it will have some of these questions that we're contemplating here examined before, but then go back to Palm Springs City Council?
Ryan, the next step in the process, do we go to council on this, or do we continue to, do the financing discussions, which is like phase 5 of the long-term plan?
Yeah, good question. The way that we have this scoped is we've got an open house plan that we're already planning for November 7th. And the idea is to share all of this information with the community, but on both sites, in addition to renderings. So what it's gonna potentially look like at both sites. It's always a little dangerous to do renderings of a planning concept because this is not, as we talked about at the beginning of the meeting, this is not design, but it does give you a sense of scale, the renderings. So the idea is to share all of this with the community in November, and then exactly when it goes to the city council has not been decided.
So we're gonna give the public another shot at this. And hopefully, if we're allowed to show up at this thing on the seventh, we can listen to their pros and cons about it as well.
Kevin, it is planned to go to the city council on the 14th, on November 20th, that's the plan.
I'd like to second Commissioner Hendrick's motion.
Did you make it? Did you refine your motion?
Yes, I refined it to the north side, let the city council figure it out.
And I'm seconding the Atlantic City Council part of the motion.
All right, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Banks,
Yes.
Commissioner Berman,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Caldwell,
Yes.
Corcoran,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Edmondson.
Yes.
Fong,
Aye.
Hendrick,
Yes.
Keel,
Yes.
McDermott,
Yes.
Hart,
Yes.
Pye. Yes. Van Lansdowne.
Yes.
Wiseman,
Yes.
Young.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you all. Thank you all. Great conversation, thoughtful. And we'll take it to the public on the seventh and get more input from the public as well. All right, good. 7B, the master plan tenant relocation, right?
Yes, we received some written questions, I believe, from Commissioner Fong. And most of them had to do with some of the planned tenant relocations in the master plan. And specifically relocations from the west side of the airport to the east side of the airport. So the major relocation that's being considered is one of the FBOs, or one of the fixed base operators at the airport, the company called Signature Aviation, whose facilities are currently located on the west side. In order to make room for terminal expansion, the master plan has envisioned relocating Signature to the east side of the airport along, I'm forgetting the name of the road now.
Gene Autry.
Along Gene Autry, yes. And we've communicated with all of the tenants on the east side of the airport, which include one of Signature's competitor FBOs, Atlantic. We've also communicated with SkyWest and also the museum. So these are kind of the major east side tenants, and then Signature would become another major east side tenant. There is space for all of these tenants and their planned facilities on the east side. One of the challenges, which was brought up eloquently in Commissioner Fong's questions, was that it's difficult to add another curb cut or another light or another roadway connection to Gene Autry. And it also requires coordination with Caltrans because it's a designated state highway. So the master plan concept does not show any new curb cuts. Where Signature is relocated, there would be some additional access through existing roadways, and the plan is to not have new curb cuts. So we appreciate those questions. We did, in your packets, you should have our written responses to that effect.
Mr. Bond, okay.
Yes, I think so. Just as a follow-up. My impression was that any construction or any changes, additional tenants on Gene Autry would require some degree of construction and change on Gene Autry itself. And that just because of the nature of doing construction on a state highway, that it would take longer and need more planning permission from the state than just changing one of Palm Springs streets. Is that time that's needed factored in to your calendar?
It is. From a master planning perspective, we allocate the amount of time that would be needed for the approvals, for the traffic studies, for everything needed to relocate Signature.
Okay. Great. Are there any other public comments? Seeing no public comments, moving forward.
Anybody on Zoom have a public comment? Please raise your virtual hand this time.
Okay, next is public parking capacity. Josh?
Good evening, commissioners. Yeah, I just have a couple of slides to run through. Let me just hold this up if it'll let me. put it in presentation mode. I was asked to give a brief update on the public parking capacity and sort of rental car relocation. They're sort of tied hand in hand here. Is some of the near-term work that we're doing in parallel to the work that the Mead and Hunt team is doing on the master plan. So just a couple of goals to quickly go through here. As part of the relocation of the rental cars to the economy lot, the goal here is just provide capacity that both closes the current deficiency that they have in their existing facility and also provide that bridge until a permanent rental car center is constructed. And so that's one of the things we're looking to do with the space on the economy lot. In parallel to that, we also are looking at accommodating public parking growth for the next 5 to 6 years, knowing that the existing facilities inside the terminal area are going to be capped out in terms of meeting parking demands. And of course, with all of this relocation, making sure that we at least provide as much capacity as exists today. And then finally, once we sort of get through this near-term period, making sure that there's compatibility with the plans you just saw from the Mead and Hunt team in terms of those longer-term master planning parking concepts. So we're really focused on how to get you from here to about 2030 or so, knowing that the rental cars will move and that we still have to provide growth to accommodate your public parking needs as well. At the moment, we're carrying forward concepts for both a north and a south RCC, as we just talked about in the prior discussion here. If the rental car center does stay, is located on the north side, it does parking in the economy lot area. We've got more flexibility to do that. If we do have to protect for a rental car center on the south side, it does reduce the available space that we have to provide the temporary facilities for the rental cars and to start staging future public parking growth, especially in the first 1 to 2 years. And that's something I'll talk about here in a second. But we've got to think about this in kind of a couple of different phases. The first phase, which I'll say is sort of the next year or two, while the temporary rental car facilities are being prepared and developed on the economy lot, we have to think about spaces around the airport that are currently paved. The time to do environmental in order to prepare additional sites for growth of public parking will take some of that time. And so we're looking for opportunities in that first year or two to use both the remainder of the existing economy lot and other existing lots for public parking in order to bridge. And so the rental car piece is the critical piece, so that will get cited first. I don't have any drawings to show you tonight. We're in the process of working with the airport to look at a couple of alternatives, make sure that we have our demand numbers right. And so conceptually is sort of what I want to go through here is just the phasing in terms of how we need to think about this. So once we get through 2026, let's say, and some environmental work is done, some of the programming is done on additional sites, we'll have the temporary rental car facility up and running. Perhaps, depending on timing, the rental car center permanent facility construction starts. But now we're able to look at some of the adjacent parcels, primarily along Kirk Douglas Way, and using those to meet the public parking demands, both the permanent demands, so the ones you need year round, and also the holiday demands for the periods in kind of November, December, and early January, where you would have traditionally used the economy lot to meet those demands. And so we are looking at concepts to do that for the kind of 3 to 5 year period. And then around 2030 or 2031, assuming again our rental car center is complete or near completion, and we gain some of the land back from the temporary rental car site, getting back on the path of the master plan in terms of the longer term public parking accommodation with the lots that they've shown along Kirk Douglas Way, all the way out to Ramon. So in a nutshell, that's kind of the way we're looking at this, sort of what can we do today? What can we do after we've finished environmental and can access more sites? And what can we do once the rental car moves are complete and we get back on the master plan path? The last thing just to share is sort of how we're thinking about this. In terms of the specific layouts of the temporary rental car site, in terms of how big it needs to be and how it's shaped and how much of the economy lot we're going to use. We're looking at walking distances within the lot, obviously some operational safety and security measures, the ability to shop, which is sort of the rental car term of if I come to the airport without a reservation and I need to pick a brand, do I have the ability to do that easily? Can we add new entrants, new rental car brands and families? And can we flex any of the spaces to public parking just to offset some of the peaks and valleys that exist between the rental cars and public parking demands throughout the year as a way to try to use less land during this time? On the parking front, we're looking at busing needs, the routes of those buses, the number of buses, how easy it is for customers to find those facilities. There are obviously advantages to having fewer facilities because it's easier for the customers to find them. It's easier to find the last parking space. And then just flexibility and risks with some of the sites in terms of what they might be in the future or other higher and better uses for that land. So as I said, we're working through these layouts and alternatives with airport staff right now. Our goal is to kind of have a proposed path forward of where's the lot, how big is the lot, what's in the lot, when is that lot available in mid-November timeframe, and then the logical step sort of following that is to feed into the some of the programming for both the public portion of the lot and the temporary rental car lot, of which there are, I believe, consultants sort of lined up and ready to do that, to take our planning efforts into a little bit more design to be able to move forward with environmental and ultimately with construction of those facilities. So that's what I've got. I wish I had more sort of visuals to show you, but we are sort of in the middle of this process, and so I was only able to kind of brief on where we're going, and hope in our next session to be able to kind of show you more of what those alternatives look like.
Thanks, Josh. Questions for Josh? All good? Look forward to another layer of detail in the next call. Thank you, Josh. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you.
Do we have any public comments? Are there any public comments from anyone on Zoom? Please raise your virtual hand if you do. No public comment. Thank you.
Noise Committee, Commissioner Fong has taken over the leadership of the Noise Committee. And we got our first meeting with, you had your first meeting today, and updates.
There were a couple of reports, for noise, but, nothing significant.
Any questions? Any questions in the public?
Any public comments on Zoom? No public comments.
All right, we can move forward. Daniel, marketing and air service, please.
There it goes. All right. Look at that happy bunch right there. Why the audience? We put that on the live, so yeah, it's probably jump ahead of few screens now. Well, here, let me just stop sharing. I'll just talk about it. You guys have a good packet, I believe, so.
Nice and loud, please.
Yes, okay, so since that's not working, you guys have our packet, I'm just gonna go through it and I'll follow along. So the first page, 2024 scheduled of party C's. 1 second, we can blow this up so I can read it. Scheduled party C's, looking into November, we are down slightly, just 0.3%. That is primarily due to the departure of JetBlue. However, in December, we are up because we have 2 new airlines joining, and then we have 2 existing airlines starting new service. So with that new capacity, we actually have completely erased the loss of JetBlue seat capacity and actually surpassing that. Looking ahead into 2025, going into the season, looking very, very strong. January at 1.9%, February 2.4%, March up 7.9%, and then April going to be up 8.8% in seats compared to 2024. That's also can be attributed to Frontier and Porter joining off Delta's new JFK, United adding Washington Dulles this year. Also, Allegiant is increasing their service to Bellingham by 67% and January, and the 33% in February, and then imagine their March and April capacity to Bellingham, Washington. So again, so going into season, we're looking very strongly, so the first portion of the year. On our passenger count, so this number of information is not on your packet because I didn't have the data available when we distributed last week. But our September total passengers came in at 142,688, which is down 5.9% compared to 2023. But however, year to date, we are still up 7% over 2023 to this day. So we're still looking good. Again, with the seat numbers I just talked about going into season, we're looking great. Seats are up in October and December, down less than 0.5% in November, but again, you have the 2 airlines arriving and expanding first from incumbent carriers. So we should have a positive outlook to finish with the year, and I think we'll finish 2024 on a strong foot. As you guys saw in the news, Frontier Airlines announced new service to Palm Springs. They're going to be returning on December 13th with 3 weekly flights to Denver and San Francisco each, plus with connections beyond. And then looking a bit further ahead in their schedules, they are going to have some weeks or months will have more flights per week depending on the week and months. So basically March and April, they plan to operate up to 4 to 5 times a week on each route. And they'll scale down kind of based on how our tourism season goes. Also, I don't know if you guys know, but Frontier is planning to operate year-round from here throughout the entire summer, so it's not a seasonal route at this time, as long as things go well. So do everything you can to promote their service, encourage people to fly local and fly our new airlines. Going on, we have several new routes and airlines returning for seasonal service. Velo's service to Bend, Redmond, coming back on the 8th of November. Delta returns to Atlanta and at JFK on December 21st. Frontier again starts, and their San Francisco and Denver service starts on December 13th. Porter, a new airline, joins Palm Springs with Toronto service on December 12th, and then United's new Dulles service starts on the 19th of December. And just as a reminder, a full list of our seasonal return and end dates is kept up at psb.com in case anybody were asked you. And then just some other updates we have, just the customer experience program that I've been working on with Commissioner McDermott and Burke. That is over to the City of Palm Springs Procurement. They told me they are going to publish it on Monday, October 21st. They'll be out there for 30 days, and then following, which will be slowly close around Thanksgiving, and lead evaluation in January. And depending on how the evaluation schedule falls, we may have something to commission for approval and recommendation to City Council in December, but probably going to be the January commission meeting. So, fun thing working on that. PSB will going to paint this year in support of Breast Cancer Awareness Month. You see a photo on the right. So on Thursdays, it's kind of our casual day. So Thursdays, we're all wearing PSB branded hot pink t-shirts. And then just final thing I have to say is the marketing committee led by Commissioner McDermott will be meeting on November 7th. And with that, we take any questions. Questions?
When you said we were up 7% year to date, is that fiscal 20
Calendar year.
calendar?
Yeah. So if I do play the numbers, we did typically talking calendar years. So yeah, so we started out, this year started out very strong with passenger numbers. And we had a hit in the summertime, which that coincides with the dip in seats we did have. You guys remember, we had reductions because San Francisco had their runway work, and so United Alaska was let it pull down. Plus you had the 737 MAX issues where we had a lot of pull downs from Southwest and whatever. So those declines weren't unexpected. But then going into finish out the year and heading into early next year, we're looking very strong.
So your monthly passenger activity report says we're at 5.9% through August. When I actually ran the numbers, we're flat. So I think you have an error in your spreadsheet.
Yeah, we found the error exactly.
So year to date, your own data is flat, not at 7%.
Well, that data comes from, I actually don't calculate that, but that when I did, I was getting it. So was that.
So just something to look at, because I don't think that.
So that
we want to say that we're.
For September, we were down 5%, but I think
Year to date
what
error?
you're saying, yours is year to date on there. And the reasoning for that is because I think it calculates, the remaining like 20, is it for 2023 numbers? Is that what it is for?
Yeah, and I checked that, and that doesn't do it either.
Okay.
That would be way up if we accidentally. September, October, November, December.
Yeah, and again, I think you use, DO, right, to calculate your numbers, is that what?
Now,
you use?
as a question, what comes from finance, that they have much report to us,
Do
so,
you use the airline activity report?
yeah, whatever, Nicole sent out this coming.
Okay.
So just check it.
We'll look at it,
Okay.
yeah.
I think we're actually flat.
Oh, okay. That would make more sense, I thought that was a bit high, given that we down really less, but I think we'll finish out our year strong, with the forecast, so.
So if we are flat, do we have concerns budget wise or master plan wise? You know, the pandemic bubble is obviously first. When was the last time that the airport had no growth? And what does that mean for the future? I think those are questions, you have questions to
Yeah.
address.
We're not concerned with the budget, meaning do we think we're gonna be at a surplus for the end of the year? So yes, I think we will be at a surplus. Because one thing, we do watch our spending habits, so, if it looks like we're gonna be in the red, then that's something that we're gonna say, hey, we need to cut back on spending. A lot of things, there's some variable costs or variable revenue numbers, and then there's some fixed revenue numbers. So the fixed numbers are really, those help us a lot. The variable numbers are like our airline numbers, like our landing fees, that is dependent on the number of passengers that are on a plane. So, so when Daniel talks about his numbers for, seats, how many seats, are we up in seat capacity? That will potentially impact our landing rates. And, what other things can we calculate off of employments?
Baggage system,
Oh, yeah.
joint use, fees for the airlines.
Yes, so those you'll probably see them dip down, but then during our peak season is usually where we end up seeing everything grow again. So, I think that we're gonna hit the budget, meaning are we gonna hit operating revenues and are we gonna hit, our expenditures? Will probably be below on both, yep. However, I think we still will have a surplus at the end of the year, so there will still be a surplus, and we track that every month, like we internally track it, so.
So one thing on parking rates, we approved an increase in parking rates a couple of months ago. Is that still going to happen?
So we put that in front of the city manager, and the city manager pulled it and said that we need to defer it to a later time.
Maybe when we have Apple Pay, we can increase the rates.
Okay,
Yes.
Daniel, you do it. You wanna go?
Okay, we'll do it together.
Okay.
We have tap and pay, Kevin.
Or you can put
They installed it this week, correct? Yeah, they got it installed.
They actually, I think they got it yesterday. or
Yesterday, yeah.
So now there is tap. So it is there.
Water
That's
fountain,
amazing.
now Apple Pay.
Yeah. We're inching along to the future.
We're starting to catch up with other people, but yeah, it's in the main lot and it's gonna be the overflow lot too.
Oh, let's stop. That's just too much. Let's wrap this thing, hold on, let's stay with the marketing questions, any other questions on marketing?
Yeah, so just real quick, I know the 737 issue with Southwest had some impact. I think some has come back. Is there any indication they're gonna add more flights? Is there gonna be anything coming?
So they've actually rebuilt a lot of their schedules, and when we were speaking to them, their biggest priority was really beefing up our schedule, getting back where it was during our tour season, because we always communicate how important that is to our local economy, and they realize that as well, because let's face it, the airlines do very well here during our tourist season as well. So, they've actually got all their schedule adjusted right now. So what you're seeing out there shouldn't have any changes. They built back a lot of it. I haven't run a report to see what the difference is just for Southwest specific. Looking for the season, we're up though. But yeah, the Southwest indicated they seem to have everything figured out, working with Boeing, and we shouldn't see any major schedule changes going forward unless something else happens to them with aircraft, so.
Are there any questions from the public before we go to finance?
Any questions from the public on Zoom? Please raise your virtual hand.
Okay, we're gonna move on, Daniel, let's make sure next month. Get the numbers. All right, let's do it. All right, financial, Victoria, pick up your conversation.
All right, so I do wanna say that, the financials, they're unaudited financials. They're taken from a snap point in time when I'm running the financials. So, what you see here today is not gonna be what, if I were to run these financials again today. So these, when I ran them, they were on the 10th, so there's updated numbers. And I say that because, right now, we're trying to close our 2024 fiscal year, so the finance department is going through the audit right now. And so they're trying to close up fiscal year 24, but they also haven't posted everything in the financials. So meaning, what does that mean? That means that payroll hasn't been posted for the month of September. So that's about 1.5 million in expenses that are not reflected on here. So whenever you look at the expenditures, you might be like, why is it so low compared to prior year last year? Because we have about 1.5 million in payroll that hasn't posted. Also, they have to do journal entries, quarterly journal entries. That's for our interest that we have for our cash, as well as some IT, administrative, fleet quarterly journal entries that hasn't posted as well. So that's another 1.1 million in expenses that you're not gonna see on our expenses here. So, the city typically, and this was a question that came up actually from a couple of commissioners about putting the revised budget based off of the month rather than putting it for the full year. But unfortunately, the way the city's financial system is they budget on an annual basis. They don't budget on a monthly basis. And so this report that you see here today, which is purple, because this is my creativeness that I put into the financials, it is adapted. So this is pretty much a data dump that comes from our ERP system, and it's been adapted over time with actually commissioners' comments and feedback of how we want it to look, as long as it's within reason, meaning it's not gonna take me a lot of time to modify it and pull out information from the financials. So, so it's adapted. It's not what would be pulled from the system, because if we pulled it from the system, there would be a million questions, like, what does that account number mean? What does that mean? There would be a lot of extra questions. So, so with that to say, we don't have the budget that says, okay, for the month of ending through September, we are budgeting this amount in revenue for this month, or this amount in expenditures. The city is looking on enhancing their ERP system to make it to a monthly budget. But maybe it's something that we can keep in mind for the next 2-year budget that we're currently gonna be going through that process and wrapping that up in February, March timeframe, so that we can have it prepared, so we can prepare it to or present it to the Budget and Finance Committee, and then we can prepare it, present it to the airlines, and then present it to City Council in June. So we have a few groups of stakeholders that we have to present our budget to. So maybe we can keep that in mind, so that for the next 2 years, we can start doing a monthly. If it's not too cumbersome for me to put it into this, maybe next year's report will be like another color. So anyway.
But I think on that point, I think we agreed that Budget Committee will meet in February, when we're ready to look at the 2-year forecast, look out 2 years. So those of you on the Budget Committee, is here in charge, right? You're in charge. Okay, you're on it.
I'm on it,
Tracy is
Tracy,
chair.
you're in charge. Here, we're looking at February.
And then, but I do also want to say that anybody that's on the Budget and Finance Committee, y'all are completely welcome to reach out to me at any time. And anybody else that is not on the Budget and Finance Committee, you're welcome to reach out if you have any questions that you want me to address for the meeting. Or if you have any questions about anything about the finances. I'm not gonna go into a lot of detail, if that's okay, unless you want me to go into the program. So we're doing well for this time of the year, even if we were to adjust for our, in our main fund, which is Fund 415, we were to adjust for those 2 entries that haven't happened with payroll, salary and benefits, as well as our quarterly allocations, we still are gonna have a surplus. So that's good. And that's good, given that we're, we've been a little down in our seats, right? So we're still doing really well. So that's why we have other services besides airline or air service, like non-aeronautical services, to help support us. There's just some things to highlight on here. One thing that I actually thought was really, really interesting was the general aviation revenue. I had a chat with the general aviation there's two of them, but one of them particularly, because I saw a larger number of sales from that company. And she mentioned that this year was an anomaly for them with fuel cells because we had, there was a training at the Air Museum that happened with, Colson, which did like fire suppression, so it was like a government contract that they have with one of the FBOs, and then there was a lot of military activity for the summer. So that really helped increase the fuel cells, and so they're like, we're probably not gonna see that, drastic increase in future years. You'll also see on the revenue where we have our advertising, so you see that and Fuse, I believe they actually, like, this is like a full-blown year, they've already been established for a year now. Last year, we were transitioning out from the prior company into Fuse, so Fuse was kind of getting their feet wet, getting started with everything. So, revenues are up when compared to prior year. And then, of course, our terminal airline fees, those went up because we increased our rates with fiscal year 2025 budget, so that cost was passed to the airlines. Other than that, I just want to say that we're doing really well, and if there's any questions, I'm available.
Questions? You okay?
I just, want to compliment Victoria on how she's doing.
Thank you.
Finance, you're doing a really good job.
Thanks, Beth. Appreciate it.
Anybody else? Public wants, any questions from the public? Any questions from Zoom? Do you have a public comment on Zoom? Please raise your virtual hand. No public comment. Okay, good. Let's go to concessions update. Jeremy.
Skip right up here, the schedule here. All right, remember, don't shoot the messenger. So here's the latest and greatest on here. Obviously Las Casuelas, French Alabama Coffee was our recent opening here a couple weeks ago. So if you weren't able to come out here for that kind of soft opening, please come on out and see the new site. Pink Door is looking to probably be the next one to open. I've shifted a couple of the dates on here. So Pink Door is looks like it's gonna start somewhere around early December timeframe, and they're expecting to open it by the end of January. Everybody remembers Pink Door is down here, pre-security where the vending machines are going, and that's gonna be a retail with coffee. So everybody's really excited about that. Trio and Vino Bolo are also under construction right now, and they have also shifted. Again, Kevin, don't shoot me here, but they've shifted to February, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but construction is construction, and they need a certain amount of weeks to be able to dig into construction, and so it kind of is what it is. But they're under full demo right now, and again, we have weekly meetings, and we're continuing to kind of nudge them along and keep them going. We have a movie called The Canteen that'll kind of round out the concession space once we get Trino and Vino Bolo open, and then we'll be adding the duty-free card. So one other item is that we are doing a slight change to the Half Moon Empanadas. And let me show you real quick a rendering of what that space is gonna look like. Let's see.
The concern was with the movie Colony Canteen, which was the new replacement for the empanadas with all the fresh food, everything fresh. Because that's going to be pushed out until April, the thought is we're gonna sell those items in this new temporary.
Right, it won't be the full menu, but what basically Parodies wants to rebrand, get rid of the Half Moon Empanadas and get rid of the empanadas. And basically rebrand it to this Fig and Plum, which is one of their name brands at other airports, and they're gonna staff this with salads and sandwiches.
The healthy stuff we were looking for.
Yeah, so hopefully
It's a great compromise.
Yeah.
One thing that we have our good friend Scott White to thank, who said something to Tom and I said, where are the TVs if people want to watch TVs? And we're like, we worked on this for 4 years. And I'm like, where are the TVs? So, we know that we're gonna have TVs in Trio, and we challenged the team, from Parodies to come back and look at the other F&B facilities to see if we can put TVs there. So people who are spending time at bars or in these restaurants, what were we thinking? But we're trying to find a way to put them into these operations.
And it was a classic example. We were so focused on food and making sure the prices were competitive and it looked great. It simply, there were a couple of our minds and we didn't think about TVs.
So we challenged you and Parodies to come back and tell us what's possible. And we'd like to add TVs to those food and beverage operations. Any questions on these sessions, Kevin?
Just a vague sense if, feels like we're meeting needs with what we have open now. As far as demand versus.
Right now, yes, not, I mean, as we start to get busy, it's gonna start to, yeah, but as we open the Fig and Plum, hopefully within the next month or so, we're also gonna bring out the coffee cart that we had last season, so we'll have plenty of coffee, because they're also selling coffee and sandwiches along Trio wall, plus you can get sandwiches across the hallway, plus you can get in Cactus the Clouds now, and Hey Joshua, so there's plenty of offerings, we think, for a while.
Cool.
So that consideration, and I'm sure you guys are thinking about it, we're getting it in season, we're opening up Rio Mirabolo, have we looked at training time for staff? Because we only have one shot to make a good first impression, and these are the most second brands. That might be something just to think about, you know, as we're sort of looking at timelines, hard opening, giving the team enough time to kind of look at the change.
Absolutely, and that's factored into the dates, but again, the dates could shift a little while, there's a lot going on in there. Like once we dug into the ceiling at Trio, we found that there was some ducting there that we didn't think was there, right? So anytime you get into these full demolish of remodels, you know, there's things that come up, so these dates could shift a little bit, but Harry's is really committed to trying to scooting this up and trying to finish it as soon as possible. And then they give their team about a week to 2 weeks, depending on the complication of the location when we say open.
And they're training their people in other operations in anticipation of going there. They talked about that when we did the tour.
But, you know, it always is a little bit different when you're doing it in a new environment.
Yeah, we're in close coordination with their local GM, and so, yeah.
Other questions on concessions? So, any public comments?
I'm sure, the planning has gone forward with seating for all the people. They're allegedly gonna eat all this food. I frequently would go through the airport and I had time to stop and eat, but there's nowhere to sit. So I didn't want to eat all that in my lap, so I just didn't buy anything.
Can you please state your name?
Sorry?
Can you please state your name?
David Spenderman.
Thank you.
You want to talk about seating?
Well, we've opened plenty of seating with Las Casuelas, because if you remember, that's been closed for the last, I don't know, 4 years, so there's, I don't know what the seating count is, I don't know if you know that, but there's a significant amount of additional seating when everything gets open.
Right. For example, the bar at the top, Cactus Clouds, 77 seats. So as these venues open, there's more seating that will be accommodated. Anything else? We have any other questions?
Comments on Zoom? Please raise your virtual hand.
All right, Victoria, the mural update.
Well, actually, can I turn it over to Christina? Because Christina's actually been doing all the work for it, so.
We're excited. The mural is getting close to being done. Logan there has been working hard. And a little bit of setback with the heat. He was hoping to be done by November 9th, but they delayed the process for him. And he says he's looking to be done no later than, end of October. I don't know.
Christina, is this, am I seeing a water fountain, a brand new measured shade water fountain?
They're all done.
They're all in?
All done.
Oh.
Yeah, the word fast here. But Logan was great, he showed us the dimensions, it was bigger than we had anticipated when he was given the project. And he was like, absolutely, I can work around it, and we're like, thank you so much.
Good. Any questions on the mural by the time? Like Chris, like, what else? Okay, anybody, public comments on the art mural or any of that?
Any other comments on Zoom, please, go ahead.
Okay, commissioners' request reports, I have a couple of comments and updates for you. First is on Thursday, the 31st, 11:30, we're going to have the official unveiling of the Agua Caliente concourse sign. The chairman of the tribe, a lot of it will be there, from the casinos, the chief operating officer, Sales Ferrari will be there. I'm gonna be there, and I think, obviously, our team will be there as well from the airport. So this is finally, we're ready to take the sign off and to reveal it. We're going to have renderings of what the activation inside of the terminal will look like. It's being developed and built now, and a ballpark of when it will be ready. So this is a big deal. Obviously, we're well into this sponsorship, and it's an opportunity for us to recognize the tribe and the partnership between the tribe and the airport commission. So that's the 31st, 11:30. If any of you are interested, feel free to join us. We're excited about the mural that's going to be done. We have had other conversations about the other project, which was, if you remember, the art project was to clean the statues and to gather all those statues around the Kennedy bus. That's not going to happen for whatever reason. So it's raised the issue of, do we need to have a smaller group looking at art and helping us to push forward getting more art in into the airport? Before, the art was the responsibility of the operations subcommittee. And there was a lot of effort and time spent over the last 2 years giving tours, working with the art commission and others to try to identify opportunities for art. Kevin is now leading the operations subcommittee. They suggested that we peel off, perhaps have an ad hoc committee to look for art. We had this discussion. We talked about this with Victoria and with Christina and others. We're not ready to make that proposal, but I think by the time we get to our next meeting, we're going to have an idea. If you have an interest in working on art here at the airport, let me know. And the logistics of all of this will work out with staff. We'll talk about that in our next meeting. The other thing I've requested is a monthly summary of where we are in HR. You know, we have 52 positions that were approved by City Council with our support. As we discussed in our strategic planning meeting, trying to get these positions filled is a real challenge. We have 149 projects to work on. Where are the people to do all these projects? So we've asked if we can have a monthly summary of where we are in terms of full-time headcount, part-time headcount, open positions, what open positions are actively being recruited by HR and our HR specialists, kind of where we are in terms of recruiting, screening, onboarding those positions. So there's a report that is now used between HR and the staff. We're gonna look at that report. I've asked the staff next month to come and to add that as part of our standard handout every month, so we can see how we're doing and getting more support and more staff to do all these great projects we're working on. Last but not least, I want to introduce Rich, who is representing Fuse. As Victoria said, there's great progress in terms of the revenue that's come from the relationship with Fuse, and they have some great ideas above and beyond everything they've done for the Agua Caliente concourse. So I'm going to introduce Rich and just ask him to tell us the latest idea, and we have something fun to share.
Good evening. I'm Rich Gordon, and I'm currently serving as the Government Community Relations Specialist for Fuse. When Fuse entered into the contract with the city for the advertising here at the airport, one of the elements that the city asked for was for us to look for unique opportunities, for product placement, product promotion, special events. So I'm pleased to announce that we have formed a partnership with K-Gate and Desert K Guide. And K-Gate will be here on October 31st in the afternoon, 1 to 5. They'll, in an area near the baggage claim, we're going to have a disc jockey. In the courtyard, they're going to have a booth and a couple of staff people, so that folks who are getting off airplanes for Gay Pride Weekend will be able to pick up a Gay Desert Guide, a map to Pride events, and be welcomed by K-Gay here to Palm Springs. As part of this, K-Gay will also be promoting, starting next week, the play and stay program, and inviting people to come on the 31st to the airport, who are local. So, and I think we have the 30-second promotional spot.
You roll that promotion? You have to listen carefully. This is gonna be Oliver K. promoting this thing.
I can get it blank.
Damn, you're out of roll.
If you don't mind, I'll start from the beginning.
Celebrate Pride Weekend with K-Gay and Fuse. Stay cool. Experience the dance party with Montreux and check out all of the new improvements. Allows you access to the gates, even if you're not blind. Secure your free stay like that today. PSP.com/stay what on
Use it in our airport.
We hope that this is just the beginning of some unique things that we can do together. And there is no cost to the airport for this. This is being paid for by Fuse and K-Gay, and the advertising is going to go on starting next Monday. And K-Gay is all paid for by K-Gay itself, part of this effort. So
If we can do this on the 31st, imagine what we'll do during Coachella. We're gonna have Austin, Austin's airport, with their live bands, it's like the greatest thing in the world, so Coachella, we'll build on this idea, we hope. All right,
I will also share, if you haven't heard yet, Live with Kelly and Mark, we will be coming to our destination and doing 4 shows. They just so happened during their show, they were interviewing a woman named Anna King, who's an actress. I believe she's been in Pitch Perfect and some other things. And it was discovered that she lived here and she had a great 20-second soundbite on the airport and how magnificent it is for flying out the airport. So that's nice little anecdotal plug for us.
commissioners, anything else, any other comments, any other suggestions, questions, open to all commissioners, are we good? Jeff?
I apologize, I had this idea that came up, after Commissioner Fawn was talking about, be careful on using airport assets. So I just want to ask the question, request of, if something has been considered regarding this north option. Has anyone ever looked at the possibility of decommissioning fire station number 2 and pushing that facility a little bit further to the end of El Cielo on the east side? Could give it a little more room. As far as the funding of it, since it's a city asset, They could certainly use, Measure J, Measure G funds. They could use part of the 4 million that's been built up over the years, that hasn't been spent on water fountains. They could do a number of things to, possibly relocate that fire station, or maybe it's not necessary. And I know we talked about that, but I can't remember the detail.
Yeah.
Can you either talk about it, or can we add it on the next month and get the answer to this?
Yeah, can. What?
Add it to the next one.
Uh-oh.
Thank you, Jeremy.
We broke it, we can't do this, but next month we'll get the answer, because it was discussed earlier. Okay, we'll get that answer discussed. Any other questions or comments from anybody else? All right, on the 7th of November, where's the location for where we're doing the airport review?
It's billion, but I just wanna say that while we are happy to have commissioners there, the optics of having a majority of the commission at an open house that we potentially voting on an item that relates to it again, is not encouraged by the city. So again, I'm not saying you can't attend, but it could be perceived by the public that we're violating the Brown Act if we have a majority of commissioners at an event that we could potentially be voting on.
Right, I think last time, those who had interest, get a hold of Christina, and just let us know.
Or Andrew?
Or Andrew, sorry.
We're gonna pass the torch to Andrew.
And if it becomes an issue that we tip over in terms of the Brown Act, we'll disinvite some folks, but if you have an interest in being there, I found it really helpful to listen to all the points of view, and we're gonna have a lot of points of view about all these decisions, so. All right, anything else? Are we good? Staff, we're good? Thank you, staff, for all your preparation. Well done, I appreciate that. Great conversation tonight. Thank you for your patience and for your commitment to all of this. We'll see you in November. Take care.
Good night.